大家好，我是塔哥，欢迎来到塔哥密谈录。今天我们要访谈星际政治揭秘工程创始人 Michael 萨拉博士。Michael 萨拉博士是澳洲政治学家，出生于墨尔本。他是星际政治揭秘工程 Exopolitics 的创始人，曾主办过无数颇具影响力的揭秘活动，在 UFO 与外星人信息揭秘领域里非常有名气。相信大家对一档电视节目非常熟悉，那就是关于 SSP 秘密太空计划的一档揭露节目，名字叫《揭露宇宙》。Michael 萨拉博士曾作为特邀嘉宾，与著名主持人大卫·威尔库克以及揭秘人士克里古德同台爆料。Michael 萨拉博士认为，外星人一直在与美国政府接触。前总统艾森豪威尔于1954年和2名金发碧眼的外星人进行了会面，并且大部分国家都有自己的秘密太空计划。这一切的背后都是正负外星势力之间的战争，关乎于全人类未来的命运，这便是星际政治。Michael 萨拉博士出版过许多关于 SSP 的书籍，近年的一本关于中国 SSP 内幕的书籍《红龙的崛起》备受大家的关注。那么秘密太空计划到底有什么秘密呢？无论这些信息是真还是假，塔哥都必须亲自探索一番，所以塔哥邀请到了 Michael 萨拉博士本人，采用了视频采访的形式。我已经配上了精准的中英双语字幕，方便大家观看。制作非常的累，老规矩，请大家先3连后观看。好了，话不多说，来吧，上干货。
Thank you. Yes, I'm looking forward to this interview, and I'm very glad to answer any questions you have on behalf of the Chinese audience.
我也是非常荣幸来到这里，然后你也可以提任何的问题，即使代表中国观众可以提问题，我也非常乐意的回答。
Thank you。然后好，那我们现在呢就开始进入提问环节。第一呢，我们先要理一理关于我们人类起源以及星际政治的来龙去脉。那么第一个问题呢，我想先要问我们人类的起源问题，就是我们人类是否从诞生之初就有外星种族参与了基因工程，或者说我们的祖先并非是单纯的猿人，而且说这些外星种族可能也是我们的祖先。还有一个就是可以作为这个问题的补充，就是是否有史前文明存在，以及外星人与宗教之间又有什么联系和关联呢？
Two questions. So the first question, what about the history of extraterrestrial intervention in human affairs? I believe that approximately 500,000 years ago, extraterrestrials began to intervene by genetically altering the DNA of primitive hominid species.
那关于其实是2个问题。那关于第一个问题，就是说外星人没有干预人类历史的事情，其实早在50万年前就是外星人就应该通过 DNA 操纵的方式干预了人类的这个 DNA， 而且是通过这个灵长类动物，就是那种猿人的 DNA 混合了其他，然后去干扰。
There were multiple extraterrestrial groups that did this. Approximately between 40 to 60 different extraterrestrial civilizations in the last 500,000 years have intervened in this way and have created 22 different genetic strains of humanity, which is why we have so much diversity in different races and physiologies throughout the planet.
其实在这个 ET 的干涉方面有不同的团体，就是已经在过去干涉了人类的文明，是有40到60个外星文明已经在过去的50万年间干预了人类，也创造了22个不同的这种 DNA 的谱系。这就是为什么在地球上我们的种族是如此的多元化，以及不同种族之间这个人种的体征也是大相径庭的。
In the course of the 500,000 years of extraterrestrial intervention in human affairs, there have been the rise and fall of many advanced civilizations. We know some of these, such as Hyperborea, Lemuria, Mu, and Atlantis, but many others we do not know because they happened so long ago.
在过去的50万年间，其实这个干扰一直在继续，当然它有一定的起起伏伏。这个种族呢，据我们所知的，肯定最有名的就是像那个利莫里亚，然后还有一个 Hyperborea， 就是那个北极什么人种，然后还有木大陆，还有亚特兰蒂斯，这些种族都有干预。当然还有一些是可能没有那么知名的因为时间长，所以没有太多可能会被人遗忘的种族。
The last high point in human evolution was around 11,600 years ago, which corresponds with the end of the Younger Dryas period, where the Earth's temperature increased dramatically. And this coincides very much with the literature describing the end of Atlantis. Plato, for example, described the end of Atlantis occurring approximately 11,600 years ago. And since then, we have recovered this very high civilization.
其实在这个外星种族干预的高峰期，应该说是111600年前，因为就是在当时呢有这个文献的记载哈，就是温度或者说是科学发现温度在下降是人类这个低温的最底层时期，就是有一个气候的大转变。那个时候其实就是亚特兰蒂斯末期的时候。那在相关的文献里面，比如说柏拉图也有在文献里记载亚特兰蒂斯怎么结束它的末期，所以这个亚特兰蒂斯文明应当是外星人干预我们这个文明最高峰的时期，最顶峰的时期。
Thank you.
OK， 那么在一些考古的这种挖掘上，是否有一些证据能够论证，比如说这些外星种族对我们的基因进行过干预，或者说呢，是否能够从考古学的角度来证明这些史前文明的存在呢？
Yes, there is a book describing there are multiple books describing extraterrestrials intervening in human history, and some of these involve the manipulation of human genetics. There are scholars such as Eric von Daniken and Zechariah Sitchin that describe some of this evidence.
是有一些书籍有记载，这个外星人是如何干预历史的，比如说 Eric von Daniken， 就是那个说上帝的这个那个他是怎么就是圣经和这个外星人联系起来那个事情，然后还有一个西秦西秦这个国内都知道。
对对对，地球变异。
There is also another researcher by the name of Arthur Horn who wrote a book about humanity's ancient extraterrestrial origins, and he described various points in human history where there appeared to be interventions by extraterrestrials going back many hundreds of thousands of years. And he cites archaeological evidence supporting this. And also we can add sources such as the Sumerian Kings List and then also Egyptian history, which describe extraterrestrials intervening in human affairs.
就有一个作者叫做 Arthur Horn， 他其实有写一些资料，就是讲明人是怎么被ET的这个文明来干涉，就是来干扰的，以及影响这个进程。而且就是他里边写到的说，其实这个历史已经很长了，就是说成百上千，应该是上万年、数十万年来，都有这个干涉哈。然后还有就是有一些考古的证据在他的书里面出现。另外就是在苏美尔人和这个埃及的历史文献里面，就是那些国王的纪年啊。他们讲历史的时候都会有讲到这些。
Thank you.
那么在世界各地呢，也经常能够看到一些信息，比如说挖掘到一些非常大的头颅的人类的骨骼头骨骼。那么这些高头颅人的这些骨骼的人类，他们是外星人呢，还是说是和人类外星人之间的混血？
Yes, we have evidence like the elongated skulls from Paracas in Peru and also from Egyptian mummies that have people or very long elongated skulls. And so I think what we have there are probably the hybrids, those that were a genetic combination of extraterrestrial DNA and human DNA.
在那个 Paracas right in Peru， 就是那个秘鲁的 Paracas 那个地方，它有一个非常长的头骨，这个头骨其实就非常的外星人。然后还有埃及的这个木乃伊呢，他们其实更多的像是这个混血，不完全是外星，就他们是人类和外星种族之间 DNA 混在一起的生物。
明白。那么这些外星人和宗教之间又有什么联系呢？
Aliens were behind the establishment of the very first religions in terms of worshipping gods, where we have different religious traditions focusing on anthropomorphic entities. We are talking about extraterrestrials. Where you have religions such as in Buddhism talking about a way of life or some universal force that is much closer to the truth that extraterrestrials are not just the makers of humanity, but they are also themselves created beings whose origins is not known clearly.
那其实外星人他们是创造了第一批的这个宗教，他们是宗教的这个起源。比如说在一些文献中有记载哈，或者宗教文献中记载，有一些生物它是那种变形的生物，那这种肯定就是外星来源。然后还有就是在佛教中，他们有描述一种生活方式，或者说一种这种无形的力量，他们更接近于宇宙的真理。那像这个外星人，他们在这种宗教里面不仅仅是说创造了人类，可能还是描述了他们来自于一个其实也无法定义的世界，他们有一些自己就是人类也无法理解的东西。
OK， 明白。那么我们再把目光拉回近100年的历史在上世纪的20-30年代，似乎是秘密太空计划的开端。那么我想请您叙述一下，这个 SSP 是从何开始的？外星人为何要和地球上的政府进行接触，并且是哪些外星人种族在进行接触？因为包括后来的1947年的罗斯维尔飞碟坠毁事件，以及美国总统艾森豪威尔，据说呢他在1954年接见了3种不同的外星种族，并且呢和其中一种签署了合作协议。您可以和我们详细叙述一下这些历史。
There's a lot of questions in that. So let me just take it one by one. So first, when we look at the history of extraterrestrials recently, we need to begin with the Second World War, which is when there were a number of encounters in Europe and also in the United States involving crashed extraterrestrial vehicles that were recovered by government authorities and then began studying these technologies either for the war effort or for the post-war era. And that's when the age of reverse engineering began during the Second World War.
Okay. So if 就是我们要讨论到这个外星人历史的话，就要回到这个二战时期，因为在二战时期有很多这个坠毁的事件啊，不仅在欧洲，还有在美国，就是他们坠毁，而且被政府回收。他们政府回收之后，就会去学习这些回收这些东西、这些技术，不仅是为了战争时期，也是为了战后的研究，而且是有逆向工程进行开展，就是为了二战来进行的。所以要从这个时期说起。
To begin reverse engineering these technologies, which is why in the 1950s, agreements were reached between the different US presidential administrations and extraterrestrials so that reverse engineering of these very advanced craft could begin.
Sorry, we kind of lost you before. So before you said 1950, the agreement reached between United States presidents, many presidents, and ETs. So what else did you talk about?
That the agreements allowed the extraterrestrials to assist American scientists to begin to understand the principles and the operations of these advanced extraterrestrial technologies that had been recovered in different crash sites.
Okay. 就是在这个坠毁之后呢，在不同的这个坠毁点，其实他们有签署一些协议，帮助美国的科学家研究这些这种飞行器的原理以及他们这个设备本身的构造。那在这个1950年的时候，就是也会有50年代吧，有一些协议达成，就是在不同的美国总统之间和外星人之间达成，来去研究这个研究这些设备，然后有进行一些逆向工程。Okay, that's all.
All the major countries with military infrastructures were able to begin studying technologies that were recovered. So we have the United States, we have the Soviet Union, we have France, we have Britain, and we have also China, countries with very large territories where craft were recovered or where ancient civilizations existed, where some of these advanced technologies were stored. So all of these countries had secret teams working independently or sometimes in agreement with one another to find and reverse engineer these technologies.
其实当时主要的一些大国呀，他们军方都会有开始对这方面进行发现和研究的，包括美国、苏联、法国、英国还有中国，这些国家都是那种地大物博的国家，他们都会去就大国吧，他们会开始进行这个飞船的研究，或者是说他们在当地就是发现了一些古文明，而古文明中含有了一些科技来进行秘密的这个有秘密团队进行研究，他们要么是独立秘密的研究，要么就是各国之间相互合作进行共同的逆向工程研究。OK。
那么为什么这些外星人他们要和地球上的政府接触并合作？以及是哪些这个外星人种族在进行接触呢？和他们进行合作呢？
There appeared to be 3 different groups of extraterrestrials that intervened on Earth. One group was a human-looking group, and they were more interested in helping humanity develop spiritually and ethically and not to create unfortunate circumstances with nuclear weapons. Another group was a reptilian-looking group, and they were working with the German secret space program during the Second World War and afterwards in Antarctica. And a third group are a gray extraterrestrials who have been working with the US government after agreements were reached in the 1950s.
OK， 其实有3种不同的种族在和地球政府合作。那第一种是一种人形外星人，他们其实帮助人类在灵性道路上发展，就是帮助人类有更道德的去发展，而远离这种核武器啊，还有一些不好的这个局面发生。第二种就是那种天龙人，就是那种蜥蜴人，他们是和德国的这种秘密太空项目合作，在2战以及2战之后都有合作。2战之后就是跑到了南极。然后第三种是小灰人，他们和美国的政府去进行合作，在1950年就开始那个时候开始合作吧。
那为什么这个像美国政府它和小灰人合作，然后德国和这个蜥蜴人合作，他们为什么不选择和这个类人型的北欧型的外星人，就是帮助地球人类正向发展的外星人去合作
？The human-looking extraterrestrials were not willing to give technology that could be weaponized for war, which is why they did not enter into agreements with either Germany or with the United States. The reptilians, however, they are an imperial race, and they were willing to give advanced technologies that could be weaponized for the war effort. And so this was why eventually the Germans reached agreements with the reptilians, and then later in the 1950s, the US government under President Eisenhower reached agreements with the Germans and the reptilians and began cooperating with them because the US wanted to also develop advanced space weapons so that they could keep up with what the Germans had developed.
就是因为他这个人形的外星人，他们不愿意把这个 科技提供给地球的政府，就是比如美国政府德国的政府去进行武器的这个研究，他们也这种外星人也不愿意和德国的，或者说和德国那种就是蜥蜴人和灰人的那种去合作，而这种蜥蜴人他们其实有点那种算是一种贵族一样的感觉，他们其实有这种权利，而且就是还是愿意和这个美国或者德国政府合作，把这个科技提供给他们去进行武器方面的发展。而美国它其实也是因此就是愿意和这些合作，因为他们当时美国就想在这个太空武器方面获得一定的发展。
所以说这些北欧型的外星人种族，他们不愿意就是提供武器化的科技给人，而只是希望人类能够放弃核武器，然后帮助人类提高这方面的道德以及理性上。
Yes, that's correct. That the human-looking extraterrestrials, they wanted humanity to develop more socially responsible policies where populations were looked after, fed, that poverty was eliminated, that people had health care, that these kind of more constructive social policies were addressed, whereas in the US, the military-industrial conquest, the US military-industrial complex was more interested in just building bigger and stronger weapons and did not care about the people.
因为这些北欧外星人，他其实更关心这个社会的一些福利政策，比如说让这个人口就大家群众都得到照顾，比如脱离这种贫困的状态，然后健康状况获得极大的改善，以及建设整个社会。而军工复合体他们其实就是只希望用一些很强大的武器来去控制，所以说他们对人并不是特别的关心。
明白。
普通民众不关心。
那么正义的我们暂且定义为正义的光明这个外星人联盟是否也被称为银河联邦？那么邪恶的外星人联盟是否也叫这个天龙座爬虫族的联盟？那么您可以详细的解释一下。
That is broadly correct, that there are three major alliances. One is the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which are human-looking extraterrestrials. And they're not just kind of Northern European looking, they also have different racial groups, like kind of more Asian looking groups, more groups from, say, India, Africa, that the Galactic Federation has many different types of human-looking extraterrestrial groups working with them. There is also the Draconian Empire, which are the reptilians, and there is also a group called the Orion Alliance, which is also a mixture of human-looking groups and grey extraterrestrial groups. So not all human-looking extraterrestrial groups are positive. Some are also part of a negative alliance, which is the Orion Collective.
您说的大体上是正确的，但是呢，要具体的细分，其实整体细分是有3类。比如说像您说到这个银河联邦吧，它其实是有类人型的北欧人种在里面的，但是也并不仅仅是北欧人种，包括其他种族的长得像亚洲的、印度的、非洲的，就是不同种族都在这个组织里面。那还有比如说像你说的这个天龙吧，天龙帝国它其实有一些蜥蜴人，它得有一个这个猎户座联盟在里面。当然这个猎户座联盟里面它有这种类人型的外星人也是在里头的，还有一些小灰人，所以这个就人种也是比较混乱的，也并不说北欧的就是一定是好的这样子。
明白。那么这两个组织，这两者之间是否在进行博弈或者说战争那么他们现在进展到哪一步了？就是他们之间的这种战争吧。
There is an ongoing conflict at the moment between the different extraterrestrial groups, and we currently on planet Earth are witnessing an attempt by the Galactic Federation of Worlds to wake up humanity to what has been really happening in different countries in terms of their secret space programs. The Galactic Federation is intervening against some of the reptilian bases and the Orion bases on the moon and on Mars, and have been eliminating these. they have also been helping the Earth Alliance, which is a group of governments that want to help humanity free themselves of the historic oppression from these negative extraterrestrial groups and the secret agreements they reached with the cabal or the deep state, whatever you want to call it.
那现在就是有不同的集团，他们外星这个团体都在进行斗争。其实我们地球上能看到的就是这个就是全球银河联邦吧，他们其实在多个国家，比如说和各个国家合作这个 SSP 就是秘密太空项目，来去他们也会去干扰，比如说像一些负面外星人，比如说像蜥蜴人和那个一些这个猎户座的这个负面外星人，在他们的月球、火星基地去进行一个清除，然后他们也会帮助地球的这种联盟、地球联盟和政府去帮助人类摆脱压迫，然后摆脱这个比如说黑暗势力或者说是这种 deep state 这种秘密政府的压迫。That's all。
那么这个是否正义的外星人联盟、银河联邦，它正在背后推动这个大揭露 disclosure 的发生？因为近些去年吧，还是今年就是以色列的这个高级官员负责太空项目的高级官员，然后他就爆料说，这个特朗普差点就泄露了银河联邦存在的这一个事实，但是银河联邦又不让特朗普去公布他们的存在。那么这件事情它的背后推动者是谁？以至于以色列的这个高级官员能够透露出这么劲爆的这么一个消息请萨拉博士说一下。
Yes, Professor Haim Eshed, who founded Israel's space program, created a lot of interest when he said that the Galactic Federation was working with the Trump administration and that Trump wanted to reveal the existence of the Federation, but they said that humanity is not yet ready because our technology is not sufficiently advanced. So I think this is one of the preconditions for the Galactic Federation revealing itself, that more advanced technology is released.
Okay. 在这个对是以色列的那个官员，他是揭露这个说特朗普知道这个事情，也差一点去揭露这个外星人的存在，就是这个银河联邦的存在，但是又说到人类其实没有做好准备。不过有趣的是，他有说到这个科技层面，也就是说明他说到这个他们科技非常的先进嘛，他也有间接就是说认同了说有些科技先进的科技其实已经存在或者说已经被揭露了。
明白。那么像这些它秘密太空计划里面所研制出来的，比如说自由能源技术、反重力技术，包括食品复制技术，这些技术又何时可以公开或者公布给人民
？The release of these advanced technologies is very strongly fought over between the cabal or the deep state and the Earth Alliance or the White Hats. They are fighting over when and how much of this advanced technology should be released. The White Hats want to release a lot of it, which is why we are seeing many patent applications being released describing some of these advanced technologies, and why you have the UAP report that was released in the United States recently. But the cabal, the deep state wants to stop all of this.
这个还要取决于这个阴谋力量和地球联盟就白帽力量之间的这种角逐和斗争。那至于什么时候以及揭露多大的程度，也要取决于他们的斗争。那像白帽就是正义力量，他还是想要去揭露的。然后你可以看到，就是最近有很多这种专利慢慢的都在公开一些技术，很先进的技术，包括美国也公布了就是 UAP 就是不明飞行物现象的一些报告，这些都属于地球联盟白帽的行为。那个阴谋的力量，他就是想要阻止这一切。
OK， 那么像对您提到这个 UAP 的报告，也是6月25号的时候，美国的国防部他发布了关于 UFO 和 UAP 的这个报告。他虽然没有正面去承认这就是外星人的飞行器，但是呢，又侧面向大众证实了确实有超越人类科技的飞行器存在。 那么请问萨拉博士，他发布这个 UAP 报告这个行为，还有包括法国政府，他也公布了 UFO 的报告。那么他们的目的是什么？背后又是什么样的一个势力在指导？因为像最近这个 Stephen Greer 博士他发布了一个纪录片，是叫《宇宙骗局》。他认为美国国防部的这个行为可能会是为后面要营造这个 UFO 或者外星人威胁论去营造一些东西，做一个铺垫。请问萨拉博士是怎么看待的？
I think one of the main purposes of releasing this UAP report was to make the American and the world public understand that UFOs are very real, they're very advanced, and that the US doesn't know who is flying these technologies, which I believe is a lie. They do know, but nevertheless, I think the agenda behind this lie is that they probably do want to create some kind of false flag alien event. Now, that could be either an alien invasion or it can be an alien salvation event. And I think either one is very possible, and that could happen in the next 6 months.
OK， 谢谢啊。所以这是第一方面，就是政府希望人们了解这种其中的真相，所以就公布了这样的一个报告。但是他们同时也承认说自己不知道是谁在飞行这些秘密神秘的飞行器不明飞行物。但是我觉得他们是在撒谎，他们的确知道是谁在飞这些飞行器。那第二个就是意图，可能就是说想创造一种所谓的外星人来去攻击侵略这个人类。所以说他要么就是外星人的入侵假的入侵，要么就是外星人的这个拯救，这两种情况其实都是有可能发生的，而且这两种情况都可能在接下来6个月进行这种开展。
也就是说，接下来6个月还会有一些这种关于 UFO 的重大事件发生，是吗？
I believe that there's going to be some kind of event that the deep state, the cabal want to unleash on the American people and the world, which involves some kind of deception involving extraterrestrial life. And so I think Dr. Greer's movie, The Cosmic Hoax, points us in this direction, that this is being planned, and I expect that it can happen within the next 6 months, that some kind of announcement comes forward that extraterrestrials are here. Now, it could be that they're here to invade us or that they're here to save us. It can be presented either way, but I think we probably can expect some major announcement like this.
我认为是在接下来6个月有类似这方面的事件会发生。它要么是这种邪恶力量就是那种秘密集团，他们深州政府去推动这个事情，要么是在美国，要么在全世界范围内去推动一个事件，而且这个事件是有一定的欺骗性的，就像这个Greer 博士他说到的这个纪录片里讲到的一样。这个是他想证明，就纪录片里想证明这个东西是可以提前设计出来的。那政府可能会有一个公布或者声明说，外星人已经来这儿了。但是它这个有2个走向，一个就是入侵，一个就是说来保护我们。所以说这2个都有可能。我觉得接下来6个月一定会有类似的声明首先出现，然后至于走向就是再说，看有2种可能的走向。
OK， 那么现在我还想问一个问题，就是特朗普政府他是否是和银河联邦是正面外星人有合作？他是否代表正义的一方？现在的拜登政府是否是他背后代表的是 Deep State 或者这个阴谋集团？
Yes, I believe Donald Trump is working with the Earth Alliance and with positive extraterrestrial groups such as the Galactic Federation of Worlds to reveal the truth about our history, about advanced technologies, and to reveal some of the benefits of these technologies. And he's trying to help these all be released. Whereas Biden is working with the deep state, with the cabal, with the negative extraterrestrial groups, and his goal is to create deception, distractions, and to create conflict, even a major war. And this could be a war with Iran or with China or with Russia, that the Biden administration, I think, is very aggressive and very dangerous. So we have to be very careful about what this Biden administration can do.
对，我的确认为特朗普是有属于正义这一方面，他和这个银河联邦是有合作的，想要再从历史啊或者先进科技这方面去揭露，然后把一些有利的科技带给人类，帮助人类。而拜登政府它其实是和这个秘密集团或者说是深州政府有一些的联系，它是属于负面的。那它其实可能会有一些的欺骗，或者说有一些干扰的行动，他会去做，或者说他会故意造成一些冲突和战争，比如说和伊朗啊、中国啊、俄罗斯有这样的冲突甚至战争。它是非常有这样的危险性的，就是说一定要小心拜登政府的一些举动。
OK。那么我们把话题回到中国的 SSP 上，这是所有中国网友比较关心的话题。您可以叙述一下中国的 SSP 是从什么时候开始的，以及您认为目前中国政府在跟哪些外星种族合作，他们又有什么样的议程？
Well, that's a very difficult set of questions because it involves a lot of history here. We know that Dr. Shen Shen that I described in Rise of the Red Dragon, that he was very aware of the early history of the US recovery and reverse engineering efforts of flying saucer craft. And he took that information with him to China when he went there in 1955.
那这个可能要涉及很多历史了，就是回到我书里所讲的这个钱雪森，他其实当时在美国知道相应的这种坠毁事件，然后也知道逆向工程的事情，他把这些信息都带回了当时的中国，就是1955年的时候。
And so when Dr. Shen created the Chinese space program using conventional powered rockets, he also began to have contact experiences with some extraterrestrial groups that wanted to work with him and China's officials to help develop a positive future. So this began under his work in when he set up the first Chinese space rocket launch facility in Gansu province.
那钱雪森其实当时他开创了中国的这个太空项目，当时是用传统的这种火箭这种项目，对吧？他在当时已经开始和一些外星团体有接触了，那些外星团体想和他个人也想和中国的政府进行一个积极的交流和接触，当时他们在这个甘肃就是发射场地的时候就已经开始了
That there were extraterrestrial groups that had bases in areas of the Gobi Desert and in Tibet that also worked with inner Earth civilizations. And so this is where there was some collaboration, some communication with Dr. Shen and other Chinese officials in sharing information so that China could keep up with what was happening in the Soviet Union and in the United States. Because I think the extraterrestrials are very interested in creating balance. They don't want any one country to dominate and control everyone else.
就关于中国的 SSP， 然后我想问的是，中国的政府目前是在跟哪些外星种族合作？然后他们又有什么样的一些目的？
When we are talking about the different extraterrestrial races cooperating with different governments, we have different factions. In the United States and Britain and other countries, you have a positive faction and you have a negative faction. So the negative faction are the reptilians and the Orions, and they are working with the deep state. And this is the same in China. In China, you have your positive factions and you have your negative factions. So you have the Draconians and the Orions working with some groups in China. And you also have the positive groups, the human-looking extraterrestrials that are working with other groups. And I believe that the current president working with the white hats, with the positive extraterrestrial groups.
OK， 当我们说到不同的政府的时候，其实我们要具体看不同的派系，就不管是美国、英国还有其他的国家，它都有这个正面和负面力量，和这个比如负面力量和这个蜥蜴人还有这个天龙族的他们这些种族去就是所谓的这种深州政府的力量合作。那其实中国也是一样的，中国有正面和负面的。那比如说像这个天龙族啊，还有这个爬虫族，他们其实也和不同的比如中国的团体进行合作。所以说我们要考虑到具体的这种派系团体。那我认为是和正义那一派合作。
也就是说这个我们现在最大是和这个银河联盟是有一些合作，是吗？也在推动大揭露的进程。
Yes, this is the information that I have received, that the paramount leader in China is working with positive groups, and he is part of the Earth Alliance, that he is working with people like Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin, with Donald Trump, and with India's leader, President Modi, to resolve Earth's conflicts peacefully, to create cooperation with all of the major nations so that they can release advanced technologies, take care of their people, and to have peace on Earth. But the negative group, the deep state, wants to do the opposite. They are working with the reptilians and the Orions to create war, conflict, misunderstanding, and to create poverty, and to keep the Earth ignorant of these advanced technologies that have been secretly used in the secret space programs.
据我得到消息，的确是它是属于正面的力量，它是属于地球联盟的一部分。它和这个俄罗斯的普京啊，还有其他的国家，都有一定的这个合作，包括印度的这个穆迪总统，对吧？前总统，他是有一定的合作的。然后他们之间都在进行一定的包括美国有一些和平的这种推动，想推动地球的和平，然后以和平方式解决冲突，以及和其他一些主要国家进行合作，来去释放这种先进的科技，照顾人民，然后实现这个和平。而负面的这种邪恶力量和有这种深州政府，他们其实和蜥蜴人还有这个猎户座去进行合作，他们想推动战争嘛，然后以及创造人类之间的这种矛盾冲突，然后推动贫穷，所以这种地球联盟其实是想是释放这些科技，因为这些科技在过去一直被一些秘密的这种使用者，然后被秘密的 SSP 太空项目所使用。
We know, for example, that during the President Reagan and President Bush administrations in the 1980s and the early 1990s, that China actually was given access to some of the most advanced secret space program facilities, such as Area 51. So Chinese scientists were allowed to see what the US reverse engineering efforts were doing, so that China could share some of its own information. And so China has been working with, to a limited extent, with the US secret space program to replicate these technologies in China.
就是在这个1980年代里根总统时期，还有这个早期90年代这个布什的时期，它都是我认为中国是有获取美国秘密太空项目的一些信息的，甚至他们被给予一些机会去参观51区。那相应的科学家他们也有机会去看到美国所做的逆向工程的工作，他们这么做其实也是希望中国进行一些信息的分享。那中国我认为是在就是这方面和美国是有一定的合作的，而且是有提升，就是合作是为了提升科技这方面。
This is why I believe many US defense analysts in the around when President Trump was elected became very concerned that China's secret space program was too powerful, that China now had the capacity to launch a space Pearl Harbor on the United States. So that made people very concerned. For example, Lieutenant General Stephen Quast, began to talk about China's space navy as being very powerful, and the US needed to pay attention.
其实在这个特朗普当选之后啊，就是美国有一些国防方面的分析，专家就会非常的担忧，认为中国在这方面可能会对美国造成一定的威胁，比如发动一个类似珍珠港的事件呀。包括美国有一个知名的应该是中尉Stephen Croft， 他在演讲中也有说到，说中国的这种空中的还有空军空中海军吧，他们非常的强大 ，Space Navy 对他们非常的强大，就是美国这方面应该注意一下。是这样说的。
那么我们中国的这个太空军，它背后是正面的外星人在帮助发展科技吗？
I think there have been some positive ET groups that have been helping the development of China's secret space program. That this is something that has been happening for many decades, but it is really up to China's leaders to decide how much of this technology should be shared. But of course, because in the United States and Russia and France and Britain, these technologies are not shared, then China follows a similar policy. And that means that the same negative extraterrestrial groups that are preventing these technologies from being released in the United States and Russia also have great influence in China.
那就是其实我认为是有一些正面的力量在推动中国的 SSP 发展的，在过去的10年来一直都是。但是我也认为，其实这取决于中国的领导，就中国领导决定要分享多少，就是合作多少，就是他们来决定的。包括像美国和俄罗斯，其实他们也有受到一些负面势力的干扰，就是在揭露方面、合作方面。其实中国也会有的。我认为，这也显示说，负面力量它在哪个国家它都有干扰，它都有干扰当国的该国的这个 SSP 的发展，然后有渗透。
OK， 那么您在书中也提到钱老，就是当年是因为他看到了逆向，就是在美国的逆向研究工程，所以说他知道像这种飞船的操控是需要和人的意识进行链接，所以说他回到国内以后，在中国的80、90年代就开始推动研究这个关于 ESP，还有这个 psychokinesis 这方面的一些研究。去研究我们中国称之为特异功能这方面的研究。那么他这方面的研究在上世纪研究了几十年，但是到20世纪末的时候，99年的时候就开始被压制。现在这方面的研究已经没有得到官方的支持。那么这一段历史是否萨拉博士有所了解？
Yes, this is a very important aspect of the whole secret space programs that in the 1940s, it was discovered from the crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft that the pilots had some kind of mind technology interface, that there was a connection with mental abilities and technology. And so this was very unique, and it took many decades for the US and other countries to replicate these technologies. And so now with the advanced space programs, this is something that is studied very, very closely. So yes, Dr. Shen, he did understand this, which I believe is why in the 1980s, he began to encourage the study of ESP, telekinesis, and other mental abilities, because this was, as he understood, a key aspect of being able to reverse engineer and pilot advanced spacecraft based on extraterrestrial technologies. And this is especially important when it comes to navigating space-time, that mental abilities are required.
这个的确我认为是 SSP 非常重要的一方面。自1940年代那个知名的坠毁以来，他们发现这个飞行员的确是用这个头脑科技就用头脑来控制这个技术，这是一个非常非常独特的技术。那美国还有其他国家都开始尽一切可能去尝试复制这个技术。那先进的这个太空项目呢，其实都是要 但都有秘密的，就是或者说是非常紧密的去跟进研究这些东西。那其实他当时钱学森知道这个事情1980年的时候，他也回国鼓励这方面的去研究。而且这个的确也是逆向工程里面的一个非常重要的关键所以因为飞行员他使用这种外星科技的确是需要掌握这个时空的秘诀的，就是意识。
So your question about why it is that China was open to this phenomena in the 1980s and 90s, and why it in the 2000s you didn't have as much information being presented or being supported by government officials. We have the similar process happen in the United States, where in the 1970s there was an openness to psychic remote viewing and remote influencing, but by the 1990s it was discredited, and what this means is that this is the way in which the government officials can get some support from the public, but yet they don't want to encourage the public too much to develop these abilities themselves. They don't want private institutions or non-profit organizations developing schools of remote viewing or remote influencing, because this threatens government authority and power. And I think the same process that happened in the United States is probably what is happening in China.
其实中国当时在20世纪80年、20世纪90年的时候非常鼓励，然后结果到这个下一世纪就不是特别的鼓励了，对吧？这个其实也是类似发生在美国的。那在美国1970年代的时候吧，他当时还是非常开放的心态鼓励大家去做这些研究包括遥视等等。但是在这个90年代的时候，开始就攻击这方面了，然后各种的就是诋毁这方面。所以说这个政府的支持也是非常的重要的，但是他们政府最多是就是支持，就希望得到民众的支持去研究这些，但是他们并不鼓励民众去非常公开的研究这些东西，他们更希望的是秘密的研究，然后也不希望有什么太多的 NGO 什么学校去公开的研究这方面，因为这些东西可能对政府的统治也是一个威胁吧。
明白。那么请问萨拉博士，你以前在节目中说过，红龙是激进派，白龙是和平派。那么您可否进一步说明一下红龙和白龙的概念？这个龙又是什么意思呢？是不同的引力组织吗？还有想请您谈谈关于金字塔的，特别是中国的金字塔。
Yes, when we are talking about the black dragon and the white dragon, we are talking about secret societies. And these secret societies are global in reach. And the dragon is a very powerful archetype of great force and strength. And so it's not a surprise that different societies will use the archetype of a dragon for what it is that they do. And of course, this is also connected to the draconian reptilians, because not all reptilians are bad. There are some that are very aggressive and are into control and manipulation, but others are also very positive and very spiritual. So this is why we have historically different societies that some are called black dragon societies, some are called white dragon societies, and the black dragon society is described by various insiders as more negative, working with the draconian reptilians, whereas the white dragon is working with more positive groups.
OK， 就是我认为是有比如说白龙和黑龙这种，其实是全球性的这种秘密社团。那这个龙其实它只是一个圆形的代表一些不同的力量这些原型也是跟这个龙嘛，龙是这个有关系，就是想联想到这个天龙族他们所做的事情是有关系的。那比如说像天龙族然后那个爬虫族，他们也并不是全都是坏的。那像这种同样是龙族，那里面也有好的坏的， 那坏的就是比较就是激进一点，然后好的话它其实是非常正面，然后注重灵性的发展的。这也就是为什么在历史上有不同的这种力量，它有的被称为什么黑龙，有的被称为白龙。那黑龙是更多和负面，就是天龙，负面天龙族联系在一起，那正面的就是那种白龙。
那这个红龙，刚才问到红龙。
So what about red dragon? You mentioned red dragon before, right? Like in your book, and also.
Yes, the red dragon in the book, I describe it as very much connected to the Communist Party ideology, and I describe it as being very focused on the more material aspect of human living as opposed to the spiritual aspect. And so you have a view of history which is based on historical materialism and looking at aspects of a society that has to be controlled through the material forces of production, whereas the white dragon is more interested in spiritual and ethical evolution.
那么曾经我看过关于本杰明·霍尔福德的信息，他声称自己是白龙会的这个发言人，然后这个组织呢是在日本，然后这个组织也声称自己是地球正义的幕后的联盟，和正面外星人有合作，并且呢他们也在推动这个大揭露的进程等等。这个萨拉博士是否知道这个组织以及本杰明·霍尔福德他的信息是否可信？
I believe that Benjamin Fulford does get some good information about what is happening on Earth between the different factions and the black dragon, the white dragon, green dragon, and different societies that he describes. I think he does get some accurate information, but I think he also gets some false information. And I think this is why he has been able to operate for many years, because those that are passing on his information do this mixture of truth and falsehood, so that way he is protected, so that way he can be easily dismissed, because sometimes he says ridiculous things, but other times he says things that are very accurate. So one has to be very discerning with Benjamin Fulford's information.
然后还想请您谈谈对于金字塔的这个研究，特别是中国的金字塔。
Okay, about pyramids, what do you think about pyramids, especially in China?
Yes, I think some of the pyramids in China are very, very old, that they date back to the Atlantean era, that they are approximately at least 11,600 years old, if not older, that the pyramids have some advanced technologies that are hidden within them, and that the pyramids are not mausoleums. Maybe some are. Some of the smaller ones are created in imitation of the larger pyramids, but that the older pyramids, the bigger ones, I think date back at least 12,000 years, and do have some of these advanced technologies within them.
我认为中国的这个金字塔历史非常的久，可以追溯到亚特兰蒂斯时期，他们大概有这个11600年的历史了，而且里面是有非常先进的这个科技包含在金字塔里面。我认为有一些小的金字塔，它可能是模仿那些就是大的金字塔，然后那大的金字塔有的就是确实是追溯到这个11200年前啊，还有高科技。
那么还有一个问题，就是新时代运动啊，有很多信息，例如这个一的法则就提到人类文明正在处于向更高维度扬升的过程，还有很多信息提到太阳闪焰这个概念。您是如何看待扬升这个概念？是否和银河联邦的议程有关？还包括通灵信息的这些信息有多少是真，有多少是假？我们如何去分辨？人类的命运又该何去何从呢？
Yes, this is a very, very important question. This era that we are in appears to be a very important one where humanity has to make a choice in terms of our evolution. Are we going to go down a path of fear and control and limitation, or are we going to go down a path of expansion, openness, and galactic connections? And it seems that there are some processes that are in play here, such as our solar system going through a part of the Milky Way galaxy where we are receiving more intense galactic rays, and that is impacting our physiology.
那的确是一个非常重要的这个时间点啊，因为我们现在就是人类的确是要选择，要么选择就是恐惧，要么就选择开放，然后接纳一些新的东西。那太阳系其实它是在整个银河系中也有一些反应啊，那银河系会有很多的这种光线啊，就是进来，那这些光线其实会影响人的身体的一些生理的东西，对。
And this is something that is very significant now because as we enter this region of the galaxy, we are being bombarded with very intense cosmic energy that impacts the sun, that impacts the earth, that influences our magnetic field. And so this is where the sun can actually create some major solar flares and impacts human consciousness. So this is where the ascension information becomes very important, because I do believe we are at a fundamental point of evolution.
那就是我认为这个非常重要的这一点，因为现在我们的确进入银河系的这个地区，这个地区这个宇宙能量非常强，它会影响太阳、地球、人类、电磁等等，而且这个所谓的太阳闪它是会影响，最主要是影响人的意识，对吧？所以这个扬升我认为是非常重要的，的确会给人类带来一定的这种就大的一个进化和提升。
那么像这个银河联邦也好，一些负面外星人种族也好，他们现在大量的出现在我们地球上和地球周围，是因为和这个扬升这个事件有关吗？以及他们是否也在参与推动这个事件
？All of the major extraterrestrial groups are here because they know this ascension process is happening right now. Some are here because they think humanity will fail and that many billions of people will suddenly lose their lives or will be involved in cataclysmic events, and that this will be a rich harvest for the negative groups from Orion and from the Draconian Empire. Other groups, such as the Galactic Federation of Worlds, believe that humanity can be helped to evolve, to go through the ascension event, so that hundreds of millions or billions of people all over the world are able to ascend into a higher state of consciousness and create a utopia on Earth that will become a very powerful and important member of the Galactic Federation in future years.
那所有的外星其实现在在这里了，有的呢其实是想要我们扬升，但有的是想看到我们失败。有的人可能比如说一些负面的外星种族啊，就是之前那个爬虫族，他们其实可能想看到比如数十亿人就是在一些灾难事件中死亡。那像环球银河联邦他们这个组织就可能想来到这里帮助我们，想让人类提高意识，想让我们建立一个乌托邦的世界在地球上，也希望我们成为这个未来在接下来一些年份里面成为他们的一个重要的成员。
那么您认为我们和他们的第一次接触以及这个大揭露何时才能够发生呢？您可以做一个预测。
Okay, can you make some predictions about when will that happen? When will the first contact between humans and ETs, the public contact happen?
Well, this can happen very quickly with this false flag alien event that I believe is being prepared now, and that any time in the next few months, we could have a false flag event. Now, if this doesn't happen, that means that the white hats or the positive groups, the White Dragon Society, have succeeded and that they have removed the influence of the deep state. And so that would then mean that we will probably have contact happening, positive contact with the real positive human-looking extraterrestrials happening maybe in 5 to 10 years' time. But it all depends who wins this power struggle between the deep state and the cabal and the Earth Alliance.
我认为可能很快发生。如果有一个这种虚假的外星人入侵的这个事件发生，现在这个事件已经在准备中了。那接下来几个月如果发生的话，那这个事情就已经开展了。那如果没有发生的话，也有可能是这个正面的力量已经就是白帽已经把这些力量负面力量给清除了。那到时候正面的这种外星人形，比如人形的外星，就会在接下来5到10年和人类公开的接触。这就取决于这个在 Deep State 就是邪恶正力量还有这个地球联盟之间，谁能够赢得这个力量的角逐。
明白。那么请问萨拉博士，您最后对于我们所有人有什么样的建议？比如说我们是否应该去做一些冥想，或者甚至是练气功来提高我们的意识，或者一些 energy？
Yes, raising consciousness is very, very important at this point. Doing some kind of meditation is very helpful. Working with crystal technologies also can help. The star tetrahedron is a very good crystal to work with. But also in terms of our own consciousness, being more loving, more compassionate, more forgiving, these are very important. Being in nature a lot, spending time in mindful connection with nature also is very, very helpful.
冥想当然非常重要，有助于提升这个意识，用一些什么水，比如说那个八角形，就是类似那个梅尔卡巴的形状，对，还有这个就是要与自然在一起，多和自然进行一个连接，那这样就是这些都有助于帮助我们去提升自己的意识。谢
谢萨拉博士。
感谢。
对，我们保持交流，也感谢您今天接受采访，非常辛苦，感谢您。
Yeah, thank you so much. It's like 1.5 hours, a very long time for taking this interview. Thank you for being here.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know you're running about battery.
Yes,
bye.
Battery.
Bye.
I just got a few minutes
battery
left.
running out. Okay.
Exactly.
Get the battery right now. See
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Bye bye.